Broken Trust. A side story from the Broken series by Nikki Saxton, written exclusively for Romance Audiobooks-Love. All rights reserved. Chapter 1. The Scent of Justice. The cool autumn wind carried the traitor's scent to where Kaeli Lockwood crouched behind a fallen Douglas fir. Her shifter hearing catalogued the nervous chittering of a squirrel, the distant splash of elk crossing the creek, and beneath it all, the steady rhythm of her target's heartbeat. Months of tracking had led her here, to this remote valley where mist clung to ancient cedars and squelchy moss-peppered tree trunks, to where the ghost from her past forged herbs, Oren Ravenflight. His name had lingered on her lips before tragedy turned it to ash. Pain bloomed in Kaeli's chest as her fingers found the pendant at her throat. A kind, unsuspecting pack member had recovered Maya's necklace from the charred ruins of the settlement. Kaeli had slipped it on just moments before heading out, an impulsive choice made with shaking hands. In the 3 months since, it had become her shield, a ward against feelings she didn't have time to name, let alone trust. Her target's heartbeat shifted in rhythm. He was on the move. She rose in fluid silence, her transformation no louder than a whisper of displaced air. Bones reshaped beneath her skin, features sharpening, senses flaring just enough to catch the faint trail of cedarwood Oren had left behind. She followed, light and silent on her feet, though her pulse ran hot through her veins. Less than a mile later, she saw him for the first time in over 3 months. Her stomach churned. He was exactly as she remembered, and nothing like she needed him to be. Tall, lean, head cocked in that instinctive predator's stance all shapeshifters wore like second skin. But the self-assurance she'd once admired from a distance, that quiet, untouchable confidence, was gone. His shoulders carried the weight of sleepless nights, his movements edged with caution. Messy hair fell across his brow, drawing her attention to his sharp cheekbones. And that mouth, Moon's mercy, that mouth, the one that had once made her stare too long, imagining how it might feel on her own, was pulled into a frown, lips chapped from wind and grit. He crouched by the stream, muscles flexing beneath sun-worn fabric, every motion practical and unguarded. Calloused hands dipped into the water like he'd done it 1,000 times. And just like that, the past came roaring back. Maya's laughter cutting off mid-sentence as the fireballs streaked through the sky. The acrid smell of burning homes. Kaeli's own desperate howl as she'd shifted and ran toward the flames, too late to save anyone. And after the dust settled, the truth emerged. Oren had sold their location to the Blue Moon Collective. He was no longer the man she'd admired, cared for more than she would admit. He was the reason her sister was dead. And that made him her enemy. Kaeli's hands trembled. Rage sharper than knives curled through her chest, and the wolf beneath her skin surged forward, claws unsheathing with a will of their own. She clenched her fists, forcing the shift down with a breath that smacked of iron. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. She moved forward with slow, deliberate strides, wanting him to see the predator she'd become. Oren's head snapped up, nostrils flaring, their eyes locked across 30 yards of wilderness. And there it was, that shade of blue an old romance novel compared to a tropical sea, clear, endless, and impossibly deep. She used to get lost in that color back when she was too naive to understand why it made her heart stumble. She hated that she still loved it, even at that moment when it held the weary acceptance of someone who'd been running far too long.
You've come for me, I suppose.
His raspy tone spoke of his exhaustion. Her voice didn't shake, but her rage simmered beneath every word. 3 months, Ravenflight. 3 months you've evaded justice. Oren rose slowly, water dripping from his hands as he straightened.
Justice.
He scoffed, although the word seemed to pain him.
Is that what they're calling it?
Kaeli shifted her weight, muscles coiled tight, every instinct on edge. One wrong move, that was all it would take. 43 dead, she said, her tone harder than flint. Men, women, children, my sister, she was among them. Her eyes locked on his throat. You sold out the settlement's location to the Blue Moon Collective. And for what? Zildans and power? Shock, sorrow, guilt, all crashed together in his expression.
Maya,
His voice dropped.
I didn't know. Goddess, I didn't.
He scrubbed a hand over his face, like he could wipe the news away.
Maya, she used to hum while grinding herbs.
He said sadly. His shoulders sagged and he hung his head. He gave her a rueful smile.
She said the plants liked music.
The image hit Kaeli like a blow from her combat instructor. For a moment, her vision blurred, not from rage, but memory. Maya's laughter, the scent of crushed mint on her fingertips, her off-key humming that filled their small cabin at night. She shook her head, clearing the memory from her mind. She couldn't cave into her loss. Oren needed to be dealt with first, then she would start to heal. Somehow. She's gone, Kaeli said flatly, her inner wolf howling to strike. And you made sure of it. Oren took a step toward her, then stopped himself, his hands half raised, palms open, like she was a wild creature he didn't dare provoke.
Kaeli, listen to me.
No, she hissed, teeth bared. She was close enough to see the exhaustion etched in the lines around his eyes, but she couldn't afford to let compassion, or the ghost of old feelings, blur the truth. The council's verdict was unanimous. You've been judged, found guilty.
The council, of course.
Oren laughed, a sound devoid of humor.
Tell me, who presented the evidence against me?
Her anger got the better of her and she snarled. It was Elder Thornwick. He is the one who traced Blue Moon Collective payments to you.
Thornwick?
Oren's expression darkened, his fists clenched at his sides.
Marcus Thornwick.
Kaeli nodded. Yes, Thornwick, he exposed your treachery, and as your mentor, your supervisor, Marcus risked everything to bring the truth to light.
I'm sure he did.
Oren's gaze held hers, sharp and searching. His shoulders tightened, then slowly eased, as if he was letting go of something heavy. He stepped closer, conviction ringing in his words.
Kaeli, what if I told you that everything you believe about the attack is a lie?
Chapter 2. Tracking the Right One.
Kaeli, what if I told you that everything you believe about the attack is a lie?
Kaeli tossed back her head. I'd say you're desperate. But even as the words left her lips, doubt crept in. The Oren she'd known before the massacre. The quiet strategist who'd argued for diplomatic solutions, who'd once spent 3 days searching for a lost pup, didn't match the mercenary monster Thornwick had painted.
Desperate, yes, but not lying.
He took a step toward her, his hands still fixed in a placating position.
I was framed, Kaeli, set up by someone who needed a scapegoat for their own crimes.
She lifted her chin. Prove it. The challenge hung between them as Oren reached slowly into his jacket. Kaeli's muscles coiled for attack. She relaxed as he withdrew a small device, a scry crystal, its surface pulsing with stored memory.
I've been gathering evidence,
he said, eyes locked on hers.
following Zwilden distributions, tracking communications, dodging trackers like you.
A sad smile transformed his expression.
The breakthrough came from Lyle. He was dying from a curse and his guilt finally caught up with him. He gave me this 2 days ago, right before he passed.
Kaeli stared at the crystal. What kind of proof?
The kind that would get me eliminated if the wrong person knew I had it.
Oren's gaze remained steady.
This is a recording of the real trader's agreement with the Blue Moon Collective, complete with payment confirmation and other arrangements.
Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. You could have fabricated...
Listen to it,
he interrupted.
Use your abilities, you'll know if it's real.
The smart thing would be to take him back to the council. Her mission was capture, not investigation. But the pendant, a crystal capable of repelling even the darkest magic, and able to sort lies from the truth, warmed against her skin. Forged in shadow, objects like it were deemed contraband, outlawed by the council. Like Maya before her, Kaeli wore it tucked beneath her clothing, close to her heart, hidden from the world. An heirloom of rebellion from a defiant ancestor with magic in her blood, the Lockwood family had protected it for generations. Next to Maya's treasured notebook hidden under the floorboards of their cabin, it was the only thing she had left of her. And it had never been wrong before. Oren took another step forward, his voice soothing, eyes shining with a sincerity that brushed dangerously close to something more. something that made her chest tighten.
Think about it, Kaeli. Why was the attack so precisely timed?
He asked.
How did they know exactly where to strike?
The settlement hadn't been listed on any map, its location guarded. Wolves practicing healing magic was rare. If word had spread, stronger packs would have descended, eager to exploit what they didn't understand. That kind of power made the settlement a target. But only if someone knew exactly where to aim. If this is some kind of trick, she began.
Then you'll carry out my sentence.
Oren finished quietly.
I know, but I'm not lying to you. The real mastermind behind the attack is still out there. Still trusted, still planning.
She looked at him, at the defensive way he held himself. How worry and rough living had etched new lines in his face. Either he was the most accomplished liar she'd ever met, or he was telling the truth. The pendant told her it was the latter. She waved a hand in the air. "Play it!" Oren activated the crystal with a touch. The air shimmered and Elder Thornwick's voice emerged. Smooth, precise, and lofty, it was unmistakable even through the haze of magic.
The settlement has outlived its usefulness. When can you move against it?
Give me 48 hours to position the forces.
A rough, familiar voice responded. Kaeli stiffened. The other voice on the communication was Lyle Wainroot, the settlement's liaison to the council. A bit overwhelmed at seeing Oren again, Kaeli hadn't made the connection when he mentioned the sick wolf and his intel. 2 years ago, Thornwick had been promoted to circuit judge of the Southern Werewolf Council, traveling between territories to hear grievances and pass judgment. He'd used that authority to plant Wainroot deep inside their sanctuary, to wait for the perfect moment to strike. Kaeli's teeth clenched at the betrayal. She felt no grief at Wainroot's passing.
But the payment needs to be doubled.
Wainroot went on.
The witch you recommended was rather expensive, not to mention this kind of operation carries significant risk.
Risk?
Thornwick's laugh was colder than frost and chilled Kaeli to the bone.
The only risk is if someone discovers our arrangement, which brings me to our insurance policy.
You mean the strategist?
Yes, Oren Ravenflight. The idealistic fool is perfect for our needs. Plant the communication logs in his quarters, and make sure the evidence is discovered by someone trustworthy.
And if he tries to defend himself?
He won't have the chance. I'll ensure he's discredited before he can speak. The pack will be so hungry for vengeance, they'll accept any target I provide.
Lyle chuckled.
Convenient. What about witnesses?
There won't be any. My plan makes certain of that. Remember, the healer's compound should be your first target. They have the best chance of survival and the most credibility if they escape.
Kaeli's blood turned to ice. She sank to her knees. "Turn it off," she whispered. "I've heard enough." Everything she'd believed in, everything her hunt for justice had stood on, crumbled to ash. Her wolf let out an anguished howl, not for vengeance, not for rage, but for the sister she'd failed, and the truth she hadn't seen coming.
I'm sorry.
Oren said quietly. He knelt beside her, not touching, but close, his warmth, his quiet presence, wrapped around her like a shield.
I know what it's like to have your faith destroyed.
"Thornwick," she murmured. He comforted me afterward, helped plan the hunt for you, gave me resources, support." Oren stood and Kaeli along with him. Oren placed a comforting hand on her shoulder and gave it a slight squeeze in sympathy, his words stating what she already knew.
He was making sure you stayed focused on the wrong target.
Rage bloomed hot in her chest. "All this time I've wasted hunting an innocent man, sleeping in moss and dirt while Thornwick rested easy in his bed."
Not innocent.
Oren looked down, jaw tight.
I've done things these past few months. Things I'm not proud of. Sometimes survival demands compromise. But I didn't betray the pack.
He met her gaze.
I didn't kill Maya.
His beautiful blue eyes blurred through tears she hadn't realized were falling. "What do we do now?"
We?
He seemed surprised by the word. "You have evidence, but you can't present it alone. They won't even listen to you, and I..." She touched Maya's pendant again. "I can't let her death be for nothing. Thornwick has to pay." Oren was quiet for a long moment. He took a step back to study her face.
If we do this, there's no going back. Thornwick is powerful, connected. He'll come at us with everything he has.
Good, Kaeli said, rocking on the balls of her feet. The rage was still there, but it had found a new target. I've been practicing. A smile ghosted across Oren's features.
I remember. You always were the most stubborn warrior in the pack.
Kaeli blinked. He'd noticed that? Remembered that? She recovered quickly, lifted her chin. The most effective, she corrected. And now I have the right target. The autumn wind shifted around them, carrying rain on the horizon, the promise of storms. Kaeli took a deep breath of the fresh, cool wind. Justice, it seemed, had a different face than she'd imagined. So, she said, extending her hand to the man she'd once sworn to destroy. Partners? Oren looked at her outstretched hand for a long heartbeat. Then he stepped forward and took it, his clasp firm, skin warm and calloused from his time living rough. Thunder rumbled overhead as the first drops of rain kissed their joined hands.
Partners,
He said. His gaze held hers.
but Kaeli. Remember, Thornwick's had decades to perfect his lies. We'll need to be smarter, faster, more ruthless than he expects.
She squeezed his hand in answer. His fingers didn't release. They stayed, wrapped around hers a second too long while the air between them grew charged with something other than the whiff of ozone. Then it's lucky for us, she said, her tone steady, her pulse anything but. That betrayal makes the best kindling. Chapter 3. Dangerous Alliances. The abandoned ranger station materialized through the rain like a desert mirage. Oren led the way up the overgrown path, his movements fluid despite his obvious exhaustion. An hour of hiking through uphill, rocky terrain had brought them to what he claimed was his temporary sanctuary. Even tired, his body moved like it remembered power. Silent steps, a roll of muscle beneath soaked fabric. The rain didn't touch him the same way it touched her. It curved off his shoulders like he was part of the wild, not separate from it. She watched the flex of his calves as he climbed ahead, something primitive and sharp curling in her belly. That low hum again. The one she always swallowed when she was around him rose up uninvited. "How long have you been using this place?" Kaeli asked, studying the building's weathered exterior. Unlike most shifter homes, it carried no scent markers, no territorial claim. That distinct primal badge of ownership no shifter ever went without. Oren was better at concealment than she'd given him credit for. She doubted she could withstand the urge to mark a place as hers.
A few weeks.
He paused at the door, fingers tracing symbols carved into the wood frame.
After my last safe house was compromised by bounty hunters.
The symbols flared with soft blue light at his touch. He had recognition wards? Sophisticated ones at that. "You carved those yourself?" Kaeli asked. Oren gave her a wry smile.
Learned from a witch in the north. Payment for helping her relocate a haunted graveyard. She taught me that sometimes the best hiding places are the ones that look abandoned but aren't.
His tone was casual, too casual. Kaeli raised a brow but said nothing. Wards that complex took time, trust, maybe more. She didn't ask what kind of payment, but the question hovered on her tongue like a bitter taste. Oren pushed open the door, and warm air tinged with sage and cedar spilled out. The interior surprised her. What should have been a dusty, neglected shell had been transformed into something almost warm. A small fire crackled in the stone hearth, its flicker dancing across handmade furniture and neatly arranged supplies. Books lined makeshift shelves, strategy texts, historical accounts, even magical theory. Kaeli stepped inside without thinking. Whatever bitterness she'd been holding on to, about northern witches or anything else, dissipated into the homey silence of the room. She hadn't expected this from him, the warmth, the quiet, the care tucked into every corner. Then again, she hadn't expected a lot of things. She used to get tongue-tied around him, used to blush furiously whenever his gaze landed on her, used to fake indifference just to keep from tripping over her own heartbeat. But after 3 months of tracking him like prey, she spoke with steel in her voice. And if her pulse still stumbled when he got too close, she didn't let it show. Couldn't. That wasn't what she was there for. Kaeli's gaze drifted to Oren as he shrugged off his coat. firelight catching the tired lines near his eyes. She looked away, squashing the familiar pang in her chest due to his proximity. The urge to step forward, to smooth the wet hair from his face, to press her palm to his cheek, hit hard and sudden. She clenched her jaw. No. She needed distance. A question, a distraction, anything to stop her from slipping into softness she couldn't afford. Cozy, Kaeli said, though she meant it more than she wanted to admit.
Survival requires adaptation.
That was the truth. After months of sleeping in dirt and near-freezing temperatures, chasing his scent across wild terrain, this warmth was stolen luxury. The fire, the quiet, the scent of him, curled around her bones like something she hadn't known she missed. She watched as he moved through the space like it belonged to him, hating that she couldn't look away no matter how much she wanted to. It wasn't just want. No, it was worse. It was memory, and longing, and the hollow ache of maybe. Oren shrugged out of his rain-soaked jacket, hanging it near the fire. The motion was simple, but Kaeli noticed the guarded way he moved, the lean muscle across his shoulders pulled tight, betraying injuries that hadn't healed right. Something twisted in her chest. Not sympathy. She wasn't quite ready to admit that. But seeing him worn down yet still standing, scraped against feelings she hadn't buried as deep as she thought. The edges of him, sharpened by pain, dulled by exhaustion, cut through her armor with a surgeon's precision. She told herself it was self-preservation, muscle memory, of a time when caring for him wasn't treason. But her pulse told another story. Kaeli crossed her arms, jaw tight, and turned away before he could see too much. She stepped toward the wooden table, letting her fingers trail along the edge like she needed the contact to ground herself. Maps covered the surface. Red pins marked locations connected by colored string in patterns she couldn't immediately decipher. What is this?
3 months of investigation.
Oren moved to stand beside her, close enough that she caught his cedarwood and cinnamon scent along with his determination.
Every pin represents a Blue Moon collective operation. Every string shows a connection to Thornwick.
She studied the web of evidence, her enhanced vision picking out details in the low light, documents, more scry crystals, communication logs. How did you gather all this without getting caught?
Very carefully, and from former pack members who questioned the official story and a few collective defectors who grew tired of the bloodshed.
Oren reached for a leather folder, his fingers brushing hers as he moved. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through her system. Hardly unpleasant and wholly dangerous. Kaeli pulled her hand back, disturbed by her reaction. Heat flared across her skin like his fingers had branded her. It shouldn't matter. It couldn't. She was here for justice, not to rediscover old attractions that had never led anywhere to begin with, not to fall into some half-forgotten fantasy of who he used to be to her. For the next hour, Oren walked her through his evidence. Financial records showing payments from holding accounts controlled by Thornwick, manifests for magical supplies delivered to collective safe houses, scry crystals with more detailed communications. He had put his exile to good use. This is extensive, she admitted, eyes narrowing on a particularly damning set of Zwilden transfers. But it's still not enough to convince the council. Thornwick spent decades curating his reputation.
I know.
Oren stood next to the hearth, the firelight catching on the tired lines of his face. For a moment, he looked older, worn down by truth no one wanted to hear, and
That's why I needed the recording. Physical proof. Witnessed, magically verified. Something even the council can't dismiss.
Kaeli crossed her arms, not for warmth, but to hold herself together, to rebuild her crumbling walls. He was too close, and worse, he wasn't the enemy she needed him to be. The steadiness in his voice, the care woven into every pin and thread on that map. It all made her want to believe him. Wanting was dangerous. She couldn't afford it. And the reason you need me. She said it flatly, but the words caught on something sharp in her throat. She promised herself she'd unpack why it stung. Later. Later, when she wasn't surrounded by the scent of him and the weight of all the things they never got to be. My testimony carries weight, she continued, forcing herself to sound clinical, professional. If I say the recording is genuine, they'll listen.
Yeah,
Oren said, voice quiet.
maybe.
He looked at her then, and she caught the expression in his eyes. The hope he tried too hard to bury. And something else. Something that curled low in her stomach before she could stop it. Like he needed her. Not just for her name or her title, but for her... It had to be a trick of the light. He turned to gaze back into the fire. After a long moment, he spoke again.
You're the warrior Marcus personally trained and sponsored. If you accuse him, they will investigate.
The shift from whatever had passed between them to cold reality made her chest tighten, like stepping barefoot onto ice. Real, sharp, unforgiving. She clung to it, needed the freeze to stop the thaw.
But you have to realize that you were never his protege.
Oren said softly, and she could hear the pain in his voice. Not for himself, but for her.
You were someone he manipulated. Someone whose good heart he twisted into serving his agenda. But that hunger for justice, that drive to protect people, that was real. That was always you.
The truth was a silver chain to her flank. She wrapped her arms tighter around her torso, chilled in a way no fire could drive out. This wasn't just grief. It was betrayal wearing her mentor's voice and her sister's ghost and calling it loyalty. Rain drummed against the windows as the full scope of her manipulation became clear. Not just the hunt for Oren, but every assignment before it. The numbers and faces flickered in her mind. She wanted to come up with an accurate head count, but they all tended to blur together after a while. Tears sprang to her eyes. Her voice broke. How many innocent people have I ruined on Thornwick's say-so? How many names had she memorized like coordinates? How many had she dragged back to face the council using the same hands she used to braid Maya's hair?
Kaeli, Thornwick saw your strength and your compassion, and he used both against you.
Oren said, his eyes filled with something she was afraid to name.
But he can never break the core of who you are. Please don't blame yourself for trusting someone who spent years earning that trust. I've learned to forgive myself for being manipulated. You deserve that same forgiveness.
She turned away from the maps, unable to look at the evidence of Thornwick's crimes any longer. Marcus had taken her and Maya in when their parents died in a war with a rival pack. He had become like a father. He was her anchor, her guide when her world turned to dust. She had trusted him completely. Her whole life was a script written by someone else. Kaeli rubbed her arms, chasing away the chill that had invaded her skin. But it was already inside her, a frost that ran deeper than blood. I should have questioned, should have investigated instead of just following orders. Oren cocked his head.
Like you're doing now?
The simple observation stopped her cold, her wolf growling low, ready to spring at an unseen target. He was right. She was questioning. Despite years of conditioning, despite every instinct that told her to trust her mentor, she saw through the lies to the truth. We need a plan, she said finally, straightening her shoulders. Thornwick won't just confess if we present the evidence. He'll fight back, probably try to eliminate us before we can speak.
Agreed.
Oren moved from her side to a different section of his research.
I've been working on that problem for weeks. The key is making our information public before he can silence us.
How? Kaeli asked.
The Harvest Moon Gathering is tomorrow. Every pack leader in the region will be there, along with neutral witnesses from the Fey Courts and daylight representatives from the Vampire Confederacy. If we can present our evidence there, in front of that many people...
Thornwick can't silence all of them to keep his secret. Kaeli nodded, seeing the logic. But security will be tight. How do we get close enough to speak? Oren's smile was sharp, his canines elongated.
Let me take care of that.
He pulled out a scry tablet, its screen flickering to life at his touch.
I've been in contact with a technomancer who is on our side. She has been a major source of the intel that I've gathered.
Oren tapped on his screen.
She's assured me that she has a cousin who can perform a convincing glamour, and more importantly, that she can hack into the Gathering's communication systems and broadcast our evidence directly to every scry device in the area.
Oren showed her a picture of the hacker. Leah? Kaeli arched a brow, staring at the bubblegum chewing pixie with bright pink hair whose sarcasm drew blood and had enough inked runes on her skin to fill a lake. Leah flirted as if her life depended on it, but her heart belonged to an orc she'd been seeing for a century.
Yeah,
Oren said, lips twitching. She's wild but good, Kaeli admitted. If anyone can pull it off, it's her. As Oren began stuffing evidence into a bag, Kaeli masked her relieved sigh with a cough. At least Leah was just a friend. Not that it should matter. It didn't. But it did matter. Her chest tightened, her fingers itching to reach out, to stop him, to claim a closeness she had no right to. It would be so easy to fall into his orbit again. Too easy. And it was all she could do to pretend she hadn't already started. Her pulse betrayed her every time his sleeve brushed hers. That's a great plan. Kaeli went on over the rattle of papers, forcing her tone into something steady. If she kept talking, maybe he wouldn't notice how her throat had gone dry. Brilliant, in fact. Public, undeniable, witnessed by hundreds. Oren stilled his movements.
It also means we'll be painting a target on our backs the moment the broadcast begins.
Oren's expression grew serious.
Thornwick will know immediately that we're responsible. He'll come for us with everything he has.
Kaeli's expression turned hard. Her wolf bristled. Then we better be ready for him. They spent the next 2 hours planning, mapping out contingencies and escape routes, and discussing tactics. Working together felt natural in a way that surprised Kaeli. Oren was a careful strategist, methodical and thorough, but he listened to her suggestions and built on her ideas rather than dismissing them. It reminded her of why she'd been drawn to him, before duty and tragedy had driven them apart.
There's something else.
Oren said as they finished reviewing their plans.
Something I need to tell you before we go any further.
Kaeli looked up from the map she'd been studying, noting the tension in his shoulders. What?
The recording. It contains more than just evidence of Thornwick's guilt.
He met her eyes and she saw pain there, carefully controlled but unmistakable.
There are details about the attack, about what happened to the healers.
Her breath caught. Maya?
Thornwick mentioned specific targets. Your sister, she was hunted down. Deliberately.
The pendant seemed to burn in its hiding place above her heart. Maya, who had never hurt anyone, who had spent her life healing instead of fighting, had been betrayed by someone she trusted. Why?
Because she was working on something. A new healing technique that could counteract collective magic. Thornwick couldn't risk her completing the research.
Rage flooded through Kaeli's system, so intense it made her vision blur. Her hands shifted involuntarily, claws extending as her wolf surged toward the surface. The careful control she'd maintained for months cracked like glass under pressure.
Kaeli.
Oren was beside her suddenly, his hands on her shoulders, grounding her.
Breathe. I know it's terrible, but we need you focused.
She looked up at him, seeing her own anger reflected in his eyes. She died because she was trying to save people, because she was good.
Yes, and Thornwick will pay for that. But only if we do this right.
Slowly, deliberately, Kaeli pulled her wolf back under control, breathed until her hands returned to normal, until the red haze of fury faded enough for thought. Tomorrow, she said.
Tomorrow.
Oren agreed.
We end this tomorrow.
Thunder crashed overhead, and the lights flickered. In the brief darkness, Kaeli saw something else in Oren's expression. Not just anger or determination, but something warmer. Something that reminded her of stolen glances and half-formed dreams from years ago. When the light steadied, the moment had passed, but its heat lingered in the space between them. Oren busied himself with packing, movements methodical, while Kaeli slipped into the tiny bathroom for a shower. He'd given her one of his shirts, soft, worn, and saturated with the scent of him. She hadn't realized how much she wanted it until it was in her hands. Later, her hair damp and the cotton clinging softly to her skin, she followed the cedarwood and cinnamon scent back to the fire. Oren was crouched there, stoking the flames, his back to her. When he stood and turned, the firelight caught her in full. He froze, just for a second. His eyes moved over her, quiet and lingering. Then he cleared his throat, rubbed the back of his neck like he wasn't sure what to do with his hands anymore.
There's only one bed,
he said, almost apologetic.
It's lumpy and too short.
He glanced at the floor.
I'll sleep on the ground.
Kaeli opened her mouth to argue, but stopped. Not because he was being noble, but because part of her wanted to let him, to keep that space between them, even if it meant cold hardwood and silence. But the ache in her ribs told a different truth. She stood silent for a beat, her heart louder than the rain pattering against the roof. The fire crackled. She was a warrior, trained to lead, to strike, to endure, but the question on her lips took a different kind of courage. "I don't want the bed to myself," she said quietly. "I was wondering if, would you mind holding me?" Oren looked up. The firelight caught the brilliant blue of his eyes, no longer guarded, no longer weary, just open. His smile was small, but it lit something in her.
Yes,
He said, voice gentle as falling rain.
I can do that.
And maybe it wasn't about comfort. Maybe it wasn't even about him. Maybe it was about the version of herself that still believed in warmth, in wanting, in something other than duty. She needed to hold on to that peace tonight, even if it broke her tomorrow. Later, curled against him beneath worn blankets, his arms around her like a promise, Kaeli didn't dream of flames or screams or her sister's last breath. She dreamed of nothing at all. And for the first time in over 3 months, she truly slept. Chapter 4, Broadcast of Truth. In wolf form, the evidence strapped to Oren's back and a change of clothes to Kaeli's, they raced through the forest in sync, paws pounding the earth as one. It didn't take long to reach the outskirts of the gathering site. They shifted and dressed behind separate trees. Kaeli kept her eyes strictly forward. Mostly. She could have peeked, but she didn't. Still, she wouldn't have minded if Oren had snuck a glance. Not that she'd ever admit it. When they stepped out at the same time, both a little rumpled, they exchanged shy glances and awkward half-smiles, like two teens heading into battle in their first date. Their breakfast was simple, dried meat and cool stream water. But they ate it sitting close, shoulders brushing now and then, the quiet filled with soft laughter and easy teasing. No grand speeches, no strategies, just warmth and breath and a few stolen moments of peace before the world tried to take it all away. Exactly what they needed before stepping into the storm. The dawn's mist had long since faded when Leah materialized in a shimmer of pixie dust, her dramatic flair only slightly subdued by the gravity of their mission. Behind her came two figures, a tall stranger with a concealment blurring his features and a younger woman who resembled Leah, complete with pointed ears and silver hair.
"Darling,"
Leah whispered, embracing Kaeli, then Oren before introducing the mysterious figure.
"this is, Mr. Knight. And this little terror is my cousin Vera."
The hooded figure stepped forward, pulling out a scry device.
I managed to extract more recordings from Thornwick's private communications. Fresh intel from a recent data sweep.
Oren reached for the device, but Leah intercepted it with lightning-quick reflexes.
"No time for previews,"
she said, tucking it away.
"The gathering starts in 10 minutes, and you two need to be in position. I'll weave this new evidence into the broadcast for maximum impact. Trust me, I have an eye for these things."
Don't you mean ear?
Vera piped up. Leah gave her cousin a withering look.
Leah, I should know what...
Oren started.
"Absolutely not, hun.
She waved a dismissive hand.
Your poker face is terrible. I've won enough Zildans off you because of it.
She reached up to pat his shoulder.
Better you react naturally."
She turned to the hooded figure, pressing a hand to his chest.
"Bye, handsome. See you soon?"
The stranger chuckled and dissolved into shadow, leaving only the faint scent of pine and rain. Leah sighed dreamily, then turned back to them.
"It's almost time. Vera, show them your handiwork."
The young pixie stepped forward with two shimmering stones.
Glamour charms.
She announced proudly.
Put them in your pocket the moment you step from the forest.
As she handed them to Kaeli and Oren, she said,
They are my first solo project, so they're not exactly professional grade. You'll get maybe 30 minutes before they fade. And yeah, I need to warn you. You might feel a bit itchy.
They're perfect, Kaeli assured her, holding the shiny blue stone in her hand. Thank you. As they prepared to leave for the gathering, Leah said,
"See you on the other side."
Right before she and her cousin disappeared in a shimmering lilac cloud of dust. Oren pulled at the collar of his button-down shirt, feeling the itchy concealment magic settle over his features like a second skin. To anyone looking, he'd appear as just another mid-level pack representative, forgettable and unremarkable. The Harvest Moon Gathering stretched across the sacred meadows of Silverbrook territory, seat of the Southern Council. A sea of pavilions and temporary structures dotted the landscape, housing delegates from every supernatural faction in the realm. Cooking fires filled the crisp autumn air with fragrant smoke, while scry devices flickered non-stop, relaying messages between camps and courts. Noise and motion, the perfect cover for what they were about to do. Oren scanned the crowd, heart steady but pulse not. Then he saw her, near the eastern pavilions, veiled by glamour that made her look like a young fey courtier. But he'd know that walk anywhere. Even cloaked in illusion, Kaeli moved with a quiet, lethal grace that made something deep in his chest pull taut. A kind of protectiveness, yes, but more than that, something warmer, older. The feelings he'd carried for years. Focus, he reminded himself. Keep her safe. That's all that matters. His scry phone buzzed in his pocket.
Leah, in position. I'm ready, boss.
Proceed, he typed.
Take care of that darling Kaeli. She has the hots for you, you know? BTW, I approve.
He huffed a soft breath through his nose. Of course Leah knew. She always did. Oren looked up, drawn to Kaeli like always, and found her already watching him through the shifting crowd. Their eyes met, and just like that, the noise of the gathering fell away. Her lips tilted in barely a smile, but it was enough to knock the air from his lungs. He was an idiot. 1,000 times he had wanted to take her in his arms and kiss her, hold her, love her until the moon turned to dust. He couldn't, wouldn't. He was still labeled a traitor, still the exile. Until that changed, he had no right to her hope. Instead, he gave her a slight nod. It was time to begin. The main assembly was already underway in the central amphitheater, where Thornwick spoke from the decorated dais. Oren's jaw grew tight as he watched his former mentor posturing as he played the role of a wise and trusted leader.
The Blue Moon Collective threatens all our territories.
Thornwick was saying, his voice carrying clearly across the assembled crowds.
We must remain vigilant against their infiltration, their corruption of our sacred bonds.
Oren held in his snort, finding a position where he could watch both Thornwick and keep Kaeli in his sight. She was closer to the speaking circle, posed to act if anything went wrong. Another message pinged his phone.
Initiating hack, now.
For a moment, nothing changed. Then every scry device in the area flickered simultaneously, screens shifting from their normal displays to show a single image, the evidence files Oren had gathered. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as more delegates pulled out their devices, confusion quickly shifting to alarm as they processed the messages they'd received. Then the first recording began to play. Thornwick's voice, cold and calculating, discussing the settlement like it was a piece on a game board. Gasps echoed through the amphitheater as the full scope of his betrayal became clear. But then came the detail that made Oren's blood turn to ice. It carried through the air, cutting across all noise.
That northern witch proved quite effective.
Thornwick's recorded voice continued.
Her fire magic left no survivors in the designated areas. Seraphina certainly earned her payment.
Seraphina. The name hit him in the throat, closing it tight. Around him, the crowd erupted as pack leaders shouted demands for explanations. Oren barely heard them. His vision tunneled as memories crashed over him. The memories from 3 months ago that he'd tried so hard to bury.
You're leaving,
Seraphina said. Not a question, but a statement heavy with hurt. She stood silhouetted against the window, her auburn hair catching the fire of the sinking sun.
Yes,
Oren replied, because he'd never learned to lie to someone who'd shown him such kindness.
I have to.
because of her.
The words hung between them like an axe ready to split a log. Oren didn't insult her intelligence by pretending not to understand.
I never meant for this to happen,
He said quietly.
When I came here, I was just seeking knowledge about elemental magic. You offered to teach me, and I thought maybe I could learn to feel something real.
Seraphina turned, and he saw tears tracking down her cheeks.
But you can't stop thinking about her, this woman who doesn't even know you exist.
It was true, and they both knew it. Every moment with Seraphina, no matter how gentle or passionate, had been shadowed by thoughts of defiant eyes and a stubborn chin. The woman he loved was everything strong and fierce and uncompromising, everything he was not. No wonder she had never looked at him as anything more than her sister's friend.
I tried.
he said helplessly.
I wanted to love you the way you deserve.
But she's already claimed your heart.
Serafina's voice was hollow.
Go then, but don't expect me to forgive this.
He had gone that very hour, coming back just in time to see the settlement in flames and accusations of his involvement stabbing the air. The memory shattered as someone grabbed his arm. Oren spun, instincts roaring to life, only to find a glamored Kaeli beside him, concern clear in her face. "What's wrong?" she demanded. "You look like you've seen a ghost,"
Worse,
he managed.
Serafina, the witch mentioned in the recording. I know her.
Kaeli's eyes widened with understanding, then narrowed with something that might have been jealousy. "The one who taught you the ward runes." Oren flinched inward, not because she was wrong, but because Kaeli never asked pointless questions. She already knew the answer, and it burned to see that flicker of hurt in her eyes, no matter how fast she masked it. He wanted to say it had meant nothing, wanted to tell her that Serafina had been a refuge, not a choice, but that explanation felt like too much and not enough, so he just nodded. Once, brisk, guarded.
Yes.
He couldn't meet her gaze.
Kaeli, there's something you need to know.
Lies. All lies.
Thornwick's voice boomed over the chaos, amplified by magic.
These recordings are fabricated. A desperate attempt by a known traitor to clear his name.
But it was too late. The evidence was overwhelming, witnessed by too many people. Pack leaders were already calling for Thornwick's arrest, their voices rising in angry demands for justice. Oren watched Thornwick's composure crack, saw the moment when his former mentor realized the game was over. But instead of surrender, something cold and calculating flickered in the elder's eyes.
If I fall,
Thornwick snarled, his voice carrying despite the distance.
I won't fall alone.
That's when Oren smelled it. Ozone and sulfur, the signature of powerful magic being worked. His head snapped toward the eastern edge of the gathering, where a figure in a dark hooded cloak stood among the trees. Even at this distance, even with her face hidden, he recognized the set of her shoulders, the way she held herself when preparing to cast.
Serafina.
He breathed. "What?" Kaeli followed his gaze, her own senses sharpening. "Where?" The world exploded into gray smoke. It billowed up from nowhere, thick and choking, carrying the acrid taste of dark magic. Screams erupted from the crowd as people fled in all directions, unable to see more than a few feet ahead. Oren lunged toward where Kaeli had been standing, his enhanced vision useless in the magical fog.
Kaeli.
"Oren, over here!" Her voice came from his left, and her hand grasped his arm. "Stay close! We need to get out of this smoke!" Kaeli shouted over the screaming. "So we can track them."
Not through this.
Oren replied, pulling her closer. His protective instincts were in overdrive, every nerve focused on keeping her safe.
The magic is interfering with the scent trails.
A burst of flame erupted nearby, clearing a temporary hole in the smoke. Through it, Oren saw two figures standing at the edge of the meadow, Thornwick, and beside him a woman with auburn hair whose face was twisted with rage and pain. Their eyes met, and Serafina's lips curved in a smile that promised suffering. Then the smoke closed in again, and when it finally cleared minutes later, both figures were gone. "They're working together," Kaeli said, stating the obvious as they stood among the scattered, confused delegates. "Thornwick and your, witch." He nodded grimly. The look in Serafina's eyes had been unmistakable. This wasn't just about helping Thornwick escape. This was personal. Pack leaders busied themselves with organizing a pursuit, but Oren knew it would be useless. Serafina's magic would keep them hidden until they chose to reveal themselves.
They'll come for us,
he said quietly, watching Kaeli scan the crowd of Thornwick's men.
Both of them.
To himself, he muttered,
I can't believe Serafina would...
She did it because you broke her heart. Am I right? Her expression was neutral, but there was something in her tone he couldn't quite read.
Yes.
He turned to face her fully, needing her to understand.
Kaeli!
He couldn't continue. This wasn't the time or place for this conversation, with magical smoke still dissipating around them and enemies planning their destruction. But the way she was looking at him, The hurt and confusion in her eyes made his confession want to spill out anyway, despite the pack leaders shouting orders, the delegates fleeing to safety, and the sulfuric smell of Seraphina's magic. Yet, the world had narrowed to her lips. How soft and full they looked, the way they had parted in expectation, just waiting for his kiss. He leaned in, not because the moment was right, but because the ache in his chest had sharpened into something reckless. He needed to feel close to her, needed to believe there was still space for something good. But she stepped back, her eyes wide with alarm, and reality slammed back into place. His heart stopped. "Oren, your glamour!"
There he is.
A young pack member burst through the dispersing crowd, pointing directly at Oren with a shaking finger.
That's him. That's Oren Ravenflight. The traitor. He's the one who sold out the settlement.
Several other pack members spun toward them, some starting to shift in anger while others fled in terror. His glamour must have worn off, leaving him exposed. "Stand down!" Kaeli barked, stepping protectively in front of Oren. "You don't understand."
Kaeli Lockwood?
One of the warriors blinked in confusion.
"What are you doing with that murderer? Step away from him."
"Listen to me," Kaeli said, her voice carrying the authority of her years as Thornwick's protege. "The evidence you just saw proves Oren is innocent. Elder Thornwick is the real traitor."
"Lies."
Another voice shouted.
"Thornwick trained you. How do we know you haven't been compromised too?"
The crowd was growing agitated, confusion and fear making them dangerous. Oren could see the situation spiraling out of control. People always needed someone to blame in a crisis, and he was the convenient target they'd been conditioned to hate.
We need to go.
He murmured to Kaeli, scanning for escape routes.
Now.
But she stood her ground, chin lifted in that stubborn way that made his heart race. "No, we're not running anymore. The truth is out there. We will make them listen."
Kaeli.
He said urgently, seeing more warriors closing in around them.
Protecting me isn't worth your life.
She glanced back at him, something fierce determination blazing in her eyes. "Yes, it is!" Before anyone could react, a new voice cut through the uproar.
"Stand down, all of you."
The crowd parted to reveal Council Elder Mimi Blackflask, her silver hair gleaming and her expression thunderous. Behind her came the other Southern Council members, their faces grim.
Elder Blackflask.
The young pack member stammered.
"We found the traitor."
"We know exactly who the traitor is,"
she said coldly.
"And it is not Ravenflight. Our technomancers have verified the evidence. Every recording, every document, every piece of proof, all genuine."
A stunned silence fell over the gathered pack members.
"Let it be known that Oren Ravenflight has been cleared of all charges."
Blackflask nodded once to Kaeli.
"Lockwood's investigation has exposed the real architect of the settlement massacre."
Her stern gaze swept the crowd, her tone brooking no arguments as she said,
"You will treat them both with respect due to heroes of the pack."
Oren took a slow, deep breath, the first in what felt like a lifetime. It caught in his throat halfway down. He wasn't ready for the weight to vanish, didn't know what to do with the space it left behind. For weeks he'd braced for hate, for exile, for Kaeli's condemnation. He'd trained his body to endure it, his voice to sound indifferent, his heart to stay hidden. His head bowed for a moment, a silent acknowledgement of the weight that had been lifted. Not triumph, not joy, just silence. Like standing in the middle of a battlefield after the last body falls. He wasn't a traitor anymore, but the words still echoed somewhere in his ribs. Then his jaw tightened, and he raised his head, his gaze sweeping past the others to the edge of the meadow. Kaeli stood steady beside him, not guarding him, not questioning him, just there, solid as truth. Her presence settled something inside him he hadn't even realized was shaking, and for the first time in months, he let himself think that maybe he could reach for her. Though not tonight, not yet. But soon. He was free, his name clearer than the streams he'd drunk from, but instead of celebration, Oren's shoulders sagged with the weight of what came next. Marcus Thornwick and Seraphina were still out there, still dangerous, and they had nothing left to lose. Chapter 5. The Hunt Reversed. Kaeli sat at the long table in the council's great hall, watching pack members toast Oren's vindication with raised goblets of mead. Elder Blackflask had spared no expense. Plates of gold were weighted down with roasted elk, honey cakes, and a host of other delicacies. There was mead and wine for the asking, all of it meant to celebrate justice served and honor restored. But all Kaeli could focus on was the growing distance between her and the man she'd spent 3 months hunting.
To Oren Ravenflight,
Elder Blackflask declared, raising her goblet high.
Wrongly accused, unjustly hunted, but never broken. The pack welcomes you home.
Cheers erupted around the table. Oren stood gracefully, accepting the accolades with the quiet dignity she remembered from before. But now that his name was cleared, now that he was once again the respected strategist and valued pack member, where did that leave her? She was just the tracker who'd done her job. The weapon Marcus Thornwick had pointed at an innocent man.
Kaeli,
Oren said suddenly, and she realized the room had gone quiet. Everyone was looking at her expectantly.
this wouldn't have been possible without your courage. Your willingness to question everything you'd been taught. To seek the truth even when it meant admitting you'd been wrong.
Heat flooded her cheeks as the pack members turned their approval toward her, but the praise didn't feel earned. She hadn't been brave. No, she'd been fooled, manipulated, and used. I was just doing what needed to be done, she said quietly, then pushed back from the table. If you'll excuse me, I need some air. She didn't wait for permission, didn't look back to see Oren's expression. She simply walked out of the great hall into the cool night, where she could finally breathe. The moon hung fat and silver overhead, peeking out from the clouds like a mother playing with her child. Kaeli wrapped her arms around her torso, her thoughts on the future. Oren would return to his strategic planning and scholarly pursuits. She would go back to taking assignments from the council, tracking down real criminals this time. And the tentative partnership they'd built, the moments of connection and growing trust, would fade like morning mist. Tears threatened, and she angrily wiped them away. She'd survived losing Maya. She'd survived 3 months believing she was hunting justice while serving lies. She could survive this too.
Kaeli.
She spun, finding Oren silhouetted at the entrance to the forest. He'd left his victory feast to follow her out here, and the knowledge sent her heart stuttering even as she tried to steel herself against it. "You should go back," she said, proud that her voice didn't shake. "They're celebrating you. You deserve that."
I don't want to celebrate.
He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the concern in his eyes.
I want to know why you're crying.
"I'm not..."
You are.
His voice was gentle, and that gentleness undid something inside her chest.
Talk to me.
The words came out in a rush before she could stop them. "Everything goes back to normal now. You're cleared, you're home, you're exactly who you always were. And I'm just the person who was stupid enough to hunt you for 3 months.
Kaeli.
Do you know what the worst part is?" She laughed, the sound bitter. "For a few days, I thought we were partners. I thought maybe you saw me as more than just Maya's little sister who tagged along and got in the way, but now that this is over..."
You think I'll go back to not seeing you?
Oren finished quietly. She shrugged, not trusting her voice. He was quiet for so long that she started to turn away, but then his words stopped her cold.
I need to finish telling you about Serafina.
Kaeli's stomach twisted. She didn't want to hear about the witch who'd shared his bed, who'd taught him magic, who'd had a chance at loving him. But she also couldn't seem to walk away. In the end, she nodded but remained silent, staring up at the moon rather than looking at him.
While I was away, the last time before the tragedy...
For almost 8 months, Kaeli bit her lip, mad at how bitter she sounded.
Yes, during that time I met Serafina. She was kind, powerful, beautiful. She taught me ward magic, gave me a place to stay.
His voice was carefully neutral.
She also made it clear that she wanted more than just my gratitude.
"And you gave it to her," Kaeli said, hating how the words scraped her throat.
I tried to.
The admission hung between them like a confession.
She deserved someone who could love her completely. I thought maybe if I stayed long enough, if I let myself feel something...
But you couldn't?
No, I couldn't.
Oren stepped closer, turning her gently to face him.
Because every time I looked at her, every time she smiled or laughed or tried to show me affection, I kept comparing her to someone else.
Kaeli's heart started beating too fast. Who?
The most stubborn, fierce, impossibly brave woman I'd ever known.
His voice dropped to a whisper.
The one who used to sneak glances at me during pack meetings when she thought I wasn't looking. The one who always stood up for the underdog, even when it got her in trouble. The one who spent 3 months tracking me across hostile territory because she believed in justice, even when justice had the wrong face.
The tears came freely now, and Kaeli didn't try to stop them. Oren,
I left because I couldn't stop thinking about you.
He said, stepping closer.
And I came back because it wasn't fair to Serafina. I could no longer pretend to feel for her what I felt for someone else, someone I thought I couldn't have, didn't deserve. I'm no warrior.
She reached up to place a finger on his lips. You could have had me, she whispered. You could have had me years ago if you'd just asked. Something blazed in his eyes, fierce and hungry and relieved.
Kaeli.
There you are!
They sprang apart as a group of pack members emerged from the Great Hall, led by a woman with silver blonde hair and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes.
Oren, you disappeared,
the woman said, sliding up to him with practiced ease.
Elder Blackflask was asking for you. Something about assigning you to the new collective task force.
Of course,
Oren replied, but his eyes remained on Kaeli.
I'll be right there.
Wonderful. I'm Bettany, by the way.
The woman extended a perfectly manicured hand to Kaeli.
I don't think we've ever really spoken.
They had on occasion, and also been introduced several times. Kaeli put it down to Bettany being the type that tended to forget those she deemed beneath her.
You're the tracker who found our hero, aren't you? How, exciting.
The dismissal was polite, but unmistakable. Kaeli shook the offered hand briefly, noting how Bettany stepped just slightly closer to Oren, how her fingers lingered on his arm when she gestured. I should let you get back to your celebration, Kaeli said, forcing a smile. The council is waiting. She turned to go, but Oren caught her wrist.
This conversation isn't finished,
he said quietly, his thumb brushing across her pulse point. I know, she replied, even as Bettany's presence pressed against her awareness like a migraine. We'll talk tomorrow. But as she walked away, hearing Bettany's bright laughter and seeing other pack members swarm around Oren with invitations and attention, Kaeli noted that some conversations were easier to start than to finish. The next morning dawned crisp and clear, with frost painting the windows of Kaeli's small cabin. She'd barely slept, her mind churning over Oren's words and the way he'd looked at her in the moonlight, like she was something precious, something wanted. But in the harsh light of day, with memory of all those eager faces surrounding him, her insecurities crept back in. What did she really have to offer someone like Oren Ravenflight? She was a tracker, a weapon, good for hunting and fighting and little else, while he was the brilliant man who attracted scholars, dignitaries, and accomplished women like Bettany. A knock at her door interrupted her brooding. She opened it to find Oren standing on her porch, 2 cups of coffee in his hands.
I thought we could find that box you talked about, the one with your sister's notebook,
he said, his tone carefully professional.
If we're going to face Thornwick and Serafina, we need every advantage.
Of course. Kaeli stepped aside to let him in, noting the careful distance he maintained. They were back to polite cooperation with no acknowledgement of last night's almost confession. That was fine by her. She was done making a fool of herself. She led Oren through the cabin to the place where Maya had hidden her notebook, underneath a darker panel of wood near the linen cupboard. They spread the notebook and its separate pages of notes across the kitchen table, working in silence with the occasional question or two. Maya's research was more extensive than Kaeli had realized. She had made detailed analyses of magical healing techniques, theories about energy manipulation, and several references to truth crystals, which were described like the one she wore, the one she still had to tell Oren about, and she would, later, once they had captured Thornwick and the dust settled.
This is fascinating,
Oren said, holding up a page covered in Maya's careful handwriting.
She was working on a way to harness healing magic through these special crystals.
Kaeli's hand went unconsciously to where Maya's pendant rested beneath her shirt. She was always brilliant.
She mentions a sacred site.
Oren continued, flipping through the notes.
Somewhere that could serve as a testing ground. Do you know where?
The Moonlit Grove, Kaeli said immediately. She used to go there to gather herbs. Walking, it's about half a day's journey into pack territory, in the heart of the forest. Kaeli hadn't been there since her mother was alive, but with Maya's detailed notes, it wouldn't be hard to find. Oren looked up, and for a moment their eyes met across the table. The professional mask slipped, revealing something warm and searching underneath.
We should check it out.
He said quietly.
Together.
They left after a cold brunch of sandwiches and ice-cold milk. They could have run as wolves, making it to the sacred site in an hour, but the day was so bright and beautiful, they made the journey as humans. The first part of the path, worn smooth by generations of paws, was breathtaking. Ancient Douglas firs rose around them like warriors, their trunks thick with moss, their canopy woven so tightly it filtered the sunlight into soft gold. The air was rich with pine and damp earth. From time to time, the trees opened just enough to reveal glimpses of rolling hills bathed in mist, rivers that shimmered like silver threads, and mountains painted in the blues of distance. Deeper still, the woodland grew hushed, as if holding its breath. The path twisted between roots and shadow, leading them onward until there, at the heart of the forest, the sacred site lay hidden in a clearing where moonlight had touched the ground for centuries, its outer ring encircled by ancient standing stones whose deeply carved runes pulsed faintly when the wind shifted.
Incredible,
Oren breathed, stopping at the edge of the clearing. But Kaeli was already moving toward the center, drawn by a familiar warmth against her skin. Maya's pendant had picked up on something in the environment. Orin? She called, touching a cluster of crystals within the stone that pulsed with soft blue light. Look at this! He joined her, his shoulder brushing hers as they examined the formations. The crystals were identical to Maya's pendant. They had the same ethereal glow, the same thrumming energy. She was right, Kaeli whispered. This place is special. The pendant she had drawn out from underneath her shirt slipped from her fingers and winked in the sunlight.
Your necklace. Those are the same crystals.
His eyes went round.
Do they hold some kind of power?
Yes, she admitted. The pendant blazed with light in the grove's magical atmosphere. It glows when someone lies and is said to heal as well as repel dark magic. Oren stared at the necklace, understanding dawning in his expression.
That's how you knew my recording was genuine.
She nodded, acknowledging the truth. The council would confiscate it if they knew, Kaeli said, tucking it away again. It's considered too dangerous for civilians to possess.
Your secret is safe with me,
Oren said softly, and the sincerity in his voice made her chest tight. Kaeli took a sharp breath, her shoulders sagging slightly with relief. For a moment, she allowed herself to meet his eyes, a silent thank you passing between them. The fragile peace was immediately shattered when his gaze softened, dropping to her lips.
Kaeli,
he said, his voice rough with something that might have been longing.
About last night.
You don't have to explain, she said quickly. I understand. Now that you're cleared, things will go back to normal.
That's not what I want.
His hand found hers, fingers intertwining.
Last night I meant what I said, every word.
But all those people surrounding you, celebrating with you, women like Bettany who know how to be charming and social and...
I don't want charming and social.
Oren shifted closer, his free hand reaching up to cup her cheek.
I want brave and stubborn and real. I want the woman who risked everything to find the truth. I want you.
The words hung between them while she searched his face, looking for any sign of doubt or pity or misplaced gratitude. But all she saw was the same longing that had been building in her chest for years. I've wanted you since I was too young to understand what wanting meant, she confessed. But I never thought someone like you would notice someone like me.
Someone like you?
Oren's thumb brushed across her cheekbone.
You mean someone brilliant and fierce and impossibly beautiful.
Chapter 6, Justice and Sacrifice. He softened his tone.
You were never invisible to me, Kaeli. I saw you long before you saw me.
He should have said it years ago, but back then he'd been afraid of what it would mean. Afraid his feelings were born from the fact that Kaeli only saw him as the scholar, the quiet one in the shadows of warriors. But with the truth spoken aloud between them, there was no more hiding. He leaned in, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Before she could protest, he leaned in closer, making his intention clear in the way his gaze dropped to her lips. The space between them slowly disappeared, and Oren's pulse hammered in his veins as years of wondering, were finally about to end. Before he could seal his lips to hers, a chill entered his veins that had nothing to do with the mountain air. Oren drew back, straightening with a snap. A familiar magical signature he'd hoped never to feel again slithered over his skin. She was here. During their time together, some of Seraphina's fire magic had leaked into him, creating a connection that made him aware of her. She said it would heighten things between them. He never figured it would serve as a warning.
Get behind this,
he whispered urgently to Kaeli, his hand already guiding her toward the largest crystal formation.
Stay hidden. Don't come out no matter what you hear.
Oren.
Promise me.
His eyes met hers, and she must have seen something there because she slipped behind the stone without further argument. He stepped into the clearing, every muscle tense. At the edge of the tree line, a figure emerged from the shadows.
There you are, my darling.
Seraphina purred, her voice carrying across the sacred space. Flames danced around her fingertips. Her green eyes blazed with a fury that belied her concerned words.
Do you have any idea how long I've been searching? How worried I've been?
Worried?
Oren kept his voice steady.
Or angry that your prey escaped?
Her beautiful face twisted.
You broke my heart, Oren. We had something real, something powerful, and you threw it away for what? Some she-wolf that couldn't care less about you?
Oren didn't flinch. He couldn't afford to. Whatever warmth they'd shared had died with her fire and all the lies.
I was honest with you. I owed you that much.
Oren kept his voice neutral, though his heart was racing.
Hasn't there been enough destruction?
He asked, hoping to appeal to the woman who had treated him kindly before she didn't.
Let's end this now. Whatever Thornwick promised you.
Promised me?
Her laugh was as sharp as breaking glass.
He didn't promise me anything, darling. I offered my services freely. Do you know what it's like to have the man you love walk away without any regret?
I never meant...
You never meant anything.
Fire exploded around her, turning the grove's crystalline beauty into something from a nightmare.
You took everything I gave you, my home, my magic, my body, my heart, and you left me with nothing but the memory of your lies.
I wanted us to work. I did.
He said, taking a step forward.
But killing innocent people because I left you...
Innocent?
Seraphina's voice rose to a shriek.
There are no innocent people, only those too weak to take what they want. The settlement was an obstacle to the greater good. Thornwick showed me that. Showed me how to turn my pain into power.
As if summoned by his name, Elder Thornwick materialized beside Seraphina in a swirl of shadow magic. His weathered face wore a satisfied smile as he surveyed the confrontation he'd orchestrated.
Marcus!
The word came out strangled. Seeing his mentor, the man who'd trained him, shaped him, standing with the enemy, was a blade between his ribs.
Hello, Oren.
Thornwick's voice was almost gentle.
I'm disappointed it came to this. You were one of my finest operatives.
You lied to me, to all of us.
The hurt bled through despite his efforts to contain it.
Everything you taught me about justice, about protecting people...
was true from a certain perspective.
Thornwick shrugged.
The Blue Moon Collective serves the greater good. Sometimes individuals must be sacrificed for the benefit of the many.
Individuals like Maya? Like Kaeli?
Why, yes.
Marcus let out a soft laugh, as if he were truly amused.
Maya showed me her research about healing crystals and repelling dark magic. She was so proud, like she had truly accomplished something. But I couldn't have her discovery interfering with our work of enslaving magicals and harvesting their talents for our own use.
Thornwick's smile turned cold.
Convenient that we found you here. We'll destroy this place along with you. No one else will use these crystals to heal.
He turned to Seraphina.
Proceed.
Oren had no real magic beyond his wolf, but every predatory instinct screamed at him to attack. He planted his feet, muscles coiled to leap and shift midair, landing on Seraphina before taking down Thornwick. Serafina raised her hands, flames gathering into a deadly fireball. Oren launched himself forward. No thought, no hesitation, just instinct, the kind built on years of needing to protect what mattered, and almost realizing too late that Kaeli had always been just that. Suddenly, Kaeli was there, stepping between them. The fireball struck her chest where her pendant lay, and for a heartbeat, the crystal contained the magical fire like a prison. Then it reflected the flames back at their attackers. Serafina and Thornwick had time for one shocked scream before the fire consumed them, turning them to ash in seconds. The reflected fireball struck a massive stone pillar behind them, and one by one the ancient crystals began to explode, their magic unraveling in a chain reaction that would destroy the entire grove.
Kaeli!
He caught her before she hit the ground, gathering her against his chest as smoke rose from her burned clothing. She was breathing, barely, but he could feel how fragile she'd become. The crystal her family had guarded for generations now lay in 3 jagged shards around her motionless body. His hands shook. He hadn't felt fear like this, not even when he was hunted. That had been about survival. This was about losing something sacred. Oren scooped up the crystal shards, then rose with Kaeli in his arms. The ground shook. Trees split. Power split the sky in violet streaks. He ran, through the splintering grove, through the wildfire wind, with a silent prayer caught in his throat.
Please, please let her live.
2 weeks later, Oren sat beside Kaeli's hospital bed, watching her sleep. The grove's healing magic had saved her life, but recovery was slow. She'd sustained magical burns that went deeper than skin, damage that would take time and careful treatment to fully heal. You know, most people say good morning when someone wakes up, Kaeli said, her eyes still closed.
Most people don't snore like a hibernating bear,
Oren replied with a grin. She cracked one eye open to glare at him. I do not snore.
Tell that to the nurses. They've been taking bets on whether you are part grizzly.
She laughed, then winced as the movement pulled at her healing wounds. What about the collective? His expression grew serious.
We've arrested over 30 conspirators, but you were right to be concerned. The Blue Moon Collective is bigger than any of us realized. The Council estimates there are still active cells in at least a dozen other regions.
So, this isn't over?
No.
Oren admitted.
But we've dealt them a serious blow, and now the supernatural community knows what to watch for.
He reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together. It still amazed him how perfectly hers fit in his. Like they'd always been meant to find each other in the end. He told himself he wouldn't say it today. That she'd been through enough, and he should wait until she was strong again. But watching her, so brave, even in recovery, he couldn't keep it in any longer. He'd nearly lost her, and she deserved to know exactly what she meant to him. Kaeli caught the look in his eyes and tilted her head, a flush rising to her cheeks. Why are you looking at me like that? She asked, voice soft, a little breathless.
I love you.
The words tumbled out before he could stop them.
I've loved you since before I had words for it. Since before I understood what love really meant. I loved you when you were Maya's fierce little sister who glared at anyone who looked at her sideways. I loved you when you spent 3 months hunting me across hostile territory. I loved you when you risked everything to find the truth. And I'll love you for whatever time we have left in this world.
Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she was smiling. That's all I needed to hear. Her voice was barely a whisper. I love you too. For so long he'd held back. Out of duty. Out of fear. Out of respect. But there was no more running, no more waiting. He leaned down carefully, mindful of her injuries, and pressed his lips to hers in a kiss that was gentle and reverent, both of them wishing she was stronger, that he could hold her properly, but knowing they had time. All the time in the world to get this right. When they broke apart, Kaeli's eyes were bright with tears and hope. We're going to be okay, aren't we?
Better than okay.
Oren promised, his forehead resting against hers.
We're going to be everything.
Thank you for listening to Broken Trust, part of the Broken series by Nikki Saxton. You will see more of Kaeli and Oren in Broken Oath coming out in October 2025. If Kaeli and Oren's story spoke to your heart, please show your support by liking, subscribing, and sharing this channel with other romance lovers. Coming soon, a billionaire romance full of sharp banter, secret identities, and one guarded CEO who meets his match in a woman who wants nothing to do with his money and everything to do with his heart. You won't want to miss it.